It might be a good time to get out there and hop on your bike. The Ghisallo Cycling Initiative wants cyclists young and the young at heart to ride bright at night. This morning, Christopher Stanton with Ghisallo joins us to talk a little bit more about it. Good morning, Christopher. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yes, we're happy you're here too. So tell us, what is the Ride Bright at Night campaign and why is it so important?
Yeah, so I'm with Ghisallo Cycling Initiative, and we do youth, adult, and senior bicycle education. And right now is Bike Month, started on May 1st. And so one of the things we're doing for this week is our Ride Bright at Night campaign. And that's around educating people about what they need to do to stay visible at night, what the legal requirements are. And so we're going to kind of talk through some of those pieces so that people can enjoy, in the day, like I just heard on the weather broadcast, it's going to be in the 90s. So maybe people want to wait until the sun goes down a little bit and wait a little cooler, watch the sunset or something. So we want to talk about lights and reflectors.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. Now, I know early on in the pandemic, so many people were anxious to get bikes. In fact, I remember there was a time where there was a bike shortage. You couldn't get one. So there are a lot of new people out there who might be on their bikes. What are some common mistakes cyclists are making when they are out and about, especially at night, like you mentioned?
Right. So in Texas, you're required to have a front light that's visible, just like a car, visible at 500 feet, and then a rear light at 500 feet or a rear reflector at 500. And so I have this little setup here, and in front we've got, I have a little bell just because, if you're on the trails, you want to let people know you're coming. But I have a front reflector. Even though you're not required to have a front reflector, it can be a good idea in case one of your lights runs out of batteries, get a little reflective tape. But then I have two different lights here. I have this light, which blinks really well. It's so people can see you. And this other light looks, you can see it looks kind of like more like a flashlight. It's so you can see the ground. Either one of those would be sufficient. To be able to have people, if you're approaching you while you're riding, to be able to see that you're there. And in the back, I have the same sort of thing. I've got a rear red light, and I also have a backup reflector. And so you could have either one of these, but it's, in case you run out of batteries, it can be nice to have a backup thing, or just carry a spare light. So those are kind of the two key things that you need to remember. That you need a front white light, just like a car, and then a rear red reflector or a rear red light, just like a car, like your brake lights.
Yeah, I like that, especially there's no confusion, the lights are there. And what are some good reminders that you might have for cyclists? I know as someone who might be running on the trail, sometimes I'm like, do I go left or right? Which way?
Right.
What are good reminders?
The kind of order of operations is you always yield to the most vulnerable user. So cars should be yielding to bikes, bikes should be yielding to pedestrians, and everybody should be yielding to pedestrians. And so if you're on the trail, trail is pretty heavily utilized, especially during COVID. There's lots of people out and about trying to physically distance. And so you want to kind of go slow, especially if you see that there's kids or dogs. They're kind of unpredictable. They're excited to be outside as well. There could be a squirrel running by. But the couple things you can do is give people a heads up. A lot of people use a bell just to let them know they're coming. Be sure to pass. If you can touch them while you're passing, you're probably a little too close. What you said about like left or right, a lot of times cyclists will say on your left. That means they're about to pass you on your left. One thing that kind of happens with pedestrians sometimes, if they aren't experienced with that, somebody will say on your left, and the pedestrian steps to the left where the cyclist is getting ready to head. So it's always, good to give a little bit extra room because you aren't quite sure how the pedestrian, maybe the person walking, will respond. But yes, that's what the on your left part. So you always want to kind of pass slower traffic on the slower traffic's left, whether it's a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a car.
Okay, perfect. So sounds like, to wrap it up nicely, white light on the front, reflective light on the back. If you're walking, go right. If you're on the cycle, go left. And more importantly, what's your website where we can get some more information on the campaign?
So Ghisallo's website is ghisallo.org, ghisallo.org. You can also go to citycyclist.org or cycleacademy.org. Those are our youth and adult programs.
Okay, perfect. A lot of good information this morning. Christopher Stanton with Ghisallo, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely.